headlines. President Barack Obama says Washington is considering putting North Korea back on the list of terrorism sponsoring states for its alleged cyber attack on Sony Pictures. The Korean government lowers economic growth projections for this year and the next and promises continued expansionary policy and reform drives. And Korea's vice energy minister maintains the country's nuclear reactors remain safe despite a series of information leaks online. Welcome to Primetime News. Hope your week is off to a great start. Coming to you live from Seoul, I am Kang Cheri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin with the latest on the Sony hacking scandal. It's not an act of war, but U.S. President Barack Obama says he's considering putting North Korea back on Washington's terror watch list.
He described the hacking incident as an act of cyber vandalism. For this story, here is Connie Lee.
Do you think this was an act of war by North Korea?
U.S. President Barack Obama says no, he doesn't think so. But he did call the North Korean-linked cyber attack on Sony Pictures an act of cyber vandalism.
No, I don't think it was an act of war. I think it was an act of cyber vandalism that was very costly, very expensive.
Speaking on CNN's State of the Union with Candy Crowley, President Obama emphasized his earlier stance that the U.S. will take action and respond accordingly to this hack attack against the movie The Interview. It was last month when Sony Pictures suffered a massive cyber attack by hackers who demanded the studio's comedy film on North Korean leader Kim Jong-un not be released. This prompted Sony to cancel its Christmas Day release amid fear of more threats. The FBI linked the hacking to North Korea on Saturday, but the communist state continues to deny any involvement. President Obama, however, is considering redesignating North Korea as a state that sponsors terrorism.
We've got to work with the private sector, and the private sector has to work together to harden their sites. But in the meantime, when there's a breach, we have to go after the wrongdoer.
He also called on Congress to pass a cybersecurity law to protect private sectors in the U.S. So will The Interview ever be released? A lawyer for Sony Pictures, speaking to NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday, did say that the film will be distributed, but in what format is still unknown. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, North Korea, on its part, has been denying any involvement in the hacking attack since the beginning and is now outraged by the U.S. accusation. The regime has released a strong statement vowing to retaliate against Washington. Shin Se-min has more.
North Korea isn't just denying a hand in the cyber attack on Sony Pictures. They're threatening to retaliate for the mere suggestion that they were involved. In a statement posted Sunday, Pyongyang's National Defense Commission said it fully stands in confrontation with Washington in all war spaces, including the one on the web. The statement even threatens to blow up the White House, the Pentagon, and all of the U.S. mainland if President Barack Obama retaliates over the last month's Sony cyber hack. As for who was responsible for carrying out the attack on Sony, which set off a series of events that led to the theatrical release of The Interview being canceled, the North Korean regime said they had clear evidence that the Obama administration was involved in making the film. They also stressed again that the hackers worked on their own. The statement says they don't know who or where the hackers are, but praised their attack as a righteous action and that they're supporters and sympathizers of the North. South Korea didn't escape blame in the statement. The regime said it had never carried out a single hacking attack and that all cyber attack-related incidents were orchestrated by Seoul. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, China, North Korea's traditional ally and sponsor country, says it opposes all forms of cyber attacks and cyber terrorism. This is what Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi told U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry during their phone call on Sunday. Minister Yi, however, made no direct mention of North Korea during their conversation, which included the Sony hack attack. Washington had previously sought Beijing's help in reining in North Korean hackers since China is a key provider of North Korea's internet access. The Chinese government has not responded to that request as of yet. North Korea is known to operate an elite unit of 3,000 cyber experts. There are rising concerns here in South Korea that the country could be slipping headfirst into a low-growth trap.
To prevent a Japan-style standstill, officials have pledged to push through with comprehensive structural reforms next year. Here's our Hwang Jie with the government's to-do list for 2015 to rev up the economy.
The Finance Ministry on Monday lowered its 2014 growth outlook to 3.4% and that of next year's to 3.8%, citing still sluggish domestic demand. To pull the economy out of its low-growth rut, the government's economy management plan for next year will put emphasis on structural reforms while maintaining its expansionary policy.
Structural changes will focus on the labor, education, financial, and public sectors so that human resources and money, which are an economy's key elements, can be distributed efficiently.
The government will seek ways to raise the female labor participation and better utilize the foreign workforce, while educational reform will place emphasis on enhancing vocational training. It plans to promote apprenticeship programs where students in college or in vocational schools can receive training directly from related companies. The government will cut red tape in the financial sector and promote the use of IT at banks and other financial institutions to foster the so-called fintech. Under the government plan, policymakers will also tackle pressing risks head-on. One major task is diffusing threats posed by snowballing household debt.
The government will use a state housing fund to switch roughly $35 billion of short-term loans, carrying floating rates into longer-term, fixed-rate loans.
For the corporate sector, the government will introduce new measures to speed up the debt restructuring process. The move will allow troubled companies to begin workout programs before their financial health becomes irreparable. And through the structural changes, the government aims to lay the groundwork for sustainable economic growth, hopefully making 2015 a turning point for regaining economic vitality. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
And let's go in depth on the government's 2015 economic directives announced today. Joining us is Professor Yang Jun-suk from Catholic University of Korea. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Happy to be here.
So what did you think of the plans for 2015? Is it good enough, not enough? What's your take?
Okay, well, Korea faces two problems. One is short-term problem, which is the ongoing recession, which people are fearing that it will turn into a long-term problem. Okay. But we also have a long-term problem, which is low productivity coupled with very bad demographic future. I think this plan tries to deal with the long-term problem, not necessarily with the short-term one. So if we take the view that this is dealing with the long-term problem, then it's not a bad plan. It has a smorgasbord of different policies, but they're trying to raise the productivity for Korean economy.
So the policymakers want to make sure that real Koreans can feel the effects of this sort of structural reform in the coming year. But do you think that actually nothing can really fix the economy in just 1 year, as you said that these are long-term fixes? Do you think that we should just put the focus on long-term anyway and just kind of forego the short-term?
Well, we definitely need something in the long-term. And there are some elements in this plan for the short run. They did increase the government expenditure and weighted toward the first half of the year. But I think the fact that they tried to create jobs they're trying to deal with it. I'm not quite sure if the focus on the job creation is the most effective way of dealing with the short-term recession problem. Short-term recession problem, I think the key factor is trying to raise consumer and business confidence.
So let's talk about these job reforms and the labor market reforms. They said that there is an imbalance in Korea's labor market, and the finance minister said that that countries like Germany, Britain, and the Netherlands push for labor market reforms, and they actually benefited from that. Why did he bring up those countries in particular, and how can it be applied to the Korean case?
Okay, well, Korea has a bad reputation in the labor market. I think part of the problem is that the report mentions that there's a mismatch in labor. The type of people who are coming out of college isn't really fit for the current job status. Universities are at fault for that. I think the emphasis on tests to get into university is a major factor for that. Well, if you take the UK, for example, they gave up a lot of rights that went to unions. They gave a lot of labor flexibility. They also liberalized a lot of the financial market. So they've been able to live off the financial market for about 20 or 30 years. That would probably not have been possible if they didn't have more labor flexibility as well as regulatory reform during the 1980s under Margaret Thatcher. But then it's controversial because, well, the UK experienced very high growth, but there was increased income disparity.
All right, and really quickly, let's look forward to the next year on our own. What are some of the risk factors and opportunities for the Korean economy?
Okay, well, in the short term, I think, as I said before, consumer confidence, business confidence is crucial, but nobody's really sure how to make that higher. So that's been the problem for the entire this year. We're not quite sure whether we'll find the key next year. Internationally, I'm a bit worried about China's slowdown and Russia's problems that they're facing right now with the currency depreciation. If they can contain it to just Russia, it's not going to be a problem, but if it spreads, that's going to be a major factor.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights with us tonight.
Thank you.
Turning back to the threat of cyber terror, but this time here in our own backyard, authorities say despite the recent online leak of information regarding the country's nuclear reactors, there is no threat. But the hacker says he is not done yet. Our Connie Kim reports.
A 2-day-long cybersecurity drill has begun at all of Korea's nuclear facilities in light of the recent leak of sensitive information. The Energy Ministry will work with various agencies, such as a Nuclear Safety and Security Commission, to make sure all are safe from any potential cyber attacks. Over the 2-day period, the ministry will make sure that power plants are not susceptible to future hack attacks, but experts say not enough is being done.
It is going to take time and money, but the nuclear reactor's operating system should be established again from scratch. Updates aren't a long-term solution. Hackers could still shut down power at the reactor from outside.
The unidentified hacker leaked more information about the facilities over the weekend and threatened more leaks if the government does not shut down some of its reactors by Christmas Day. The freshly leaked data includes floor maps, operation manuals, and safety reports from the state-run Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Company, and information on the Kori 2 and Walsung 1 reactors. While authorities say the information released until now poses no threat, the hackers are threatening to release tens of thousands of pages of new data, including blueprints and other classified information. The investigation team says that the attack was well planned. They say the registration information the hacker used to set up a blog detailing the attack was stolen, and that the Twitter ID he or she used was registered in the U.S. Korean investigators have requested assistance from the FBI in the probe. They haven't ruled out North Korea's involvement, with some of the malware code discovered similar to that in previous North Korean attacks. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
After the Constitutional Court's historic ruling last week to disband a left-leaning political party, the election watchdog delivered a follow-up ruling on the fate of the party's counselors who vowed to not go down without a fight. Our Ji Myung-gil tells us more.
The National Election Commission decided on Monday to strip 6 members of the now disbanded Unified Progressive Party from their seats in provincial legislatures. The election watchdog said there was no reason for the councillors to maintain their posts.
The National Election Commission has decided to reclassify the 6 councillors as having resigned under election law since the party itself was dissolved for violating the Constitution.
The 6 who were appointed under the proportional representation system called the decision invalid because election law dictates that seats may be taken away only when members break away from the party. They plan to file an injunction. Last Friday, the Constitutional Court ordered the dissolution of the UPP, which resulted in 5 of its lawmakers losing their seats in the National Assembly. Political watchers had also expected that the party's 6 members in post at the provincial level would also lose their seats. All 5 of the UPP's sitting lawmakers who were kicked out of the National Assembly say they will file a lawsuit against the state. They claim the Constitutional Court does not have the right to remove them from the legislature, as there's no law that stipulates the status of lawmakers in the case their party is dissolved. However, the court said there was no reason for the lawmakers to pursue their parliamentary seats when their party had been dissolved, a decision they should responsibly accept. Last Friday's ruling comes more than 400 days after the Justice Ministry filed a petition against the UPP following the arrest of a number of its members on rebellion and conspiracy charges. Several UPP members, including former lawmaker Lee Seok-gi, were convicted of plotting to overthrow the government in the event of war with North Korea. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Ask any Seoulite what the capital's biggest fashion hub is. Most likely the answer will be Dongdaemun Fashion Town, and now its presence is rapidly expanding into overseas markets as well. Our Park Ji-won has this week's Industry Insight.
You can't talk about Korea's fashion industry without mentioning the Dongdaemun fashion market. Dongdaemun Fashion Town is the largest clothing market in Korea, and about 1/3 of all Korea's clothing distributors are based near the region. From textiles and clothing subsidiary materials to sewing factories and wholesale and retail shops. If it has to do with clothing and fashion, you will find it here. A designer's idea can be made into a final product in just a day. Let's take a look. This is Dongdaemun Fashion Town, the location of more than 30 fashion malls and tens of thousands of small clothing shops.
It's really amazing, all the districts, all the fashion, it's really nice.
I sometimes see items with unique designs that I cannot find at brand or department stores.
Retail shops are open from midnight or 2 a.m. and wholesale shops open from 8 p.m. to the next morning, meaning the market operates 24 hours a day. What's peculiar to the district is that it's like a complete fashion ecosystem where everything about fashion is clustered together. Thousands of fabric and clothing subsidiary shops and more than 20,000 small sewing factories are all nearby. Designers can turn their ideas into clothes in just a day by making a sample. And once the design is confirmed, mass production can start after another day or two. With Dongdaemun's fast yet sophisticated designs gaining global recognition, many orders now come from abroad.
Now we get many sample making orders from China as Chinese buyers visit Dongdaemun often.
The Dongdaemun district makes more money from exports than domestic sales, especially in the wholesale market.
Roughly 60% of the town's annual revenue comes from exports. International buyers are mostly from China, Taiwan, and Japan.
The fashion town also serves as a testbed for many up-and-coming designers.
Here's a hip fashion mecca where you can make and sell clothes. The region helps in my market research and market sourcing.
Some designers have successfully grown from single shops to fashion empires. This modern brand began from a shop in Dongdaemun, but has expanded to include dozens of shops in China.
Cotis Combined started as a shop in Dongdaemun in 2002. Now we have many products in many categories, particularly menswear, underwear, and a kids' clothing line.
fashion group Hyungji, which has the #1 market share in women's clothes as a domestic company, also started as a humble shop in Dongdaemun Market in the early 1980s.
The founder of the group still emphasizes the so-called Dongdaemun spirit, which is characterized by designs that are ahead of their time in order to survive the fierce competition, thorough product management, and affordable prices.
The Dongdaemun fashion market has served as a breeding ground for clothing businesses and designers ever since the end of Korean War. Thanks to the market's unique features and its vibrant energy, Korea's leading fashion hub now attracts millions of people from both inside and outside of the country. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
New York is reeling from the brutal killing of 2 police officers who were shot dead while sitting in their squad car.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, there's been more information coming out from authorities about the shooter. What can you tell us about him?
Well, the African-American suspect is said to have had a history of violence and a long criminal record, with at least 19 arrests ranging from shoplifting to gun possession. On Saturday, 28-year-old Ismail Brinsley shot and wounded his former girlfriend before gunning down the 2 officers, one Asian and the other Hispanic. He then fled from the scene and took his own life. Based on his messages on social media, Brinsley may have been seeking revenge for the recent deaths of 2 black men at the hands of white officers. Some have criticized New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, saying he had not done enough to protect police officers in the face of public anger. This as de Blasio has condemned the killings as an assassination. And switching gears now to the biggest wedding hitting the headlines, legendary musician Sir Elton John has married his longtime partner at a ceremony in England. The 67-year-old British singer tied the knot with David Furnish on Sunday, turning their civil partnership into an official marriage, which only became legal for same-sex couples in the UK earlier this year. The 2 exchanged vows at John's Berkshire estate in eastern Windsor. The lavish event was attended by a star-studded array of guests, including Victoria and David Beckham, singer Lulu, and actor Hugh Grant. And finally, turning to the United States, the Empire State Building in New York has illuminated the city's night sky in a dazzling display of colors and lights. Through Tuesday, over 15,000 channels of the building's LEDs will be synchronized to holiday-themed music on local radio stations. Organizers say the public can vote online for the best light theme, which will then be replayed on Christmas Eve. Designer Mark Brickman choreographed the show for the 440-meter-high skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Stephen Che with Monday's Sports Rundown. Now, the South Korean national football team has been assembled for next month's Asian Cup, its first true test under manager Uli Stilica, who took over in September. Working under a short timeline, Stilica focused on the strength of South Korea's talents. As such, gifted playmakers like Son Heung-min, Ki Sung-yong, and Lee Chung-yong are key pieces to the midfield-centered attack, while veterans Cha Duri and Kwak Tae-hui lead the back line. The 23-man squad will face Saudi Arabia in a friendly on January 4th before kicking off their Asian Cup campaign on the 10th. And moving on, let's get to Monday's KBL action, which takes us to the tip-off down south in Changwon. Now, the LG Sakers face the SK Knights, and the Sakers jump out the gate, but the Knights outduel them in the second and third quarters. SK holds on to win by 14, locking in 2 wins in a row. Heading to pro volleyball, 2 matches took place in Suwon, and the ladies hit the court first. It was the Hyundai ENC Hill State playing host to KGC, and off the bat, KGC is outmatched as Rymova pounces on them. The #1 Hyundai ENC win easily and rebound from a 2-game skid. Meanwhile, the Samsung Hwajae Blue Fangs also win over the KEPCO Big Storm as Leo unloads on the home team. With that, they get their first straight sets victory in over a month. And finally, footballer Cristiano Ronaldo was honored with a life-sized statue of himself in his hometown in Madeira, Portugal. Cast in bronze, the statue depicts the superstar in his trademark free kick pose and is situated in front of his personal museum in Funchal, the town he grew up in. 29-year-old who was in town for the unveiling said it was a special moment for him. He's had many of those, the latest of which came in Real Madrid's Club World Cup victory over the weekend. And that's all I have for sports. Stay tuned for the weather up next. Have a good night.
Hello, I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather updates. Earlier today, morning lows plunged, reaching minus 20 degrees over in Gangwon-do province, but numbers quickly rose. Moving on, at the moment, we are under mostly clear skies due to a high pressure front from China. Well, this month was colder than the seasonal average, and it looks like relief is in sight, though, as conditions should begin to ease up from tomorrow afternoon. Looking ahead, we won't be able to enjoy a white Christmas this time around, but we'll be able to wrap up the year under moderate temperatures. On to Tuesday's readings. Seoul makes it to 5, Gwangju and Daegu 7. On to other places. Jeju makes it to 10, while Dokdo hits 8. Those are the updates I have for you now. I'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, Bo-kyung, and that's Primetime News for this Monday. I am Kang Chiri. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great evening. We'll see you soon.